All right, hey everybody. Malik and I are sort of doing a kind of impromptu look back at 2019, as well as a brief sort of talk about things that we're anticipating in 2020 as far as film and TV goes. And so, yeah, each of us has our list of stuff that we've experienced over the past year that we just felt like giving a shout to and sort of discussing our reflective thoughts on, and things that are coming eventually that we're excited for. And there's some overlap between our two different lists, but I'm going to start with what I know isn't on Malik's list, and that's mainly animation stuff. So 2019 is when we got Steven Universe the movie and Steven Universe Future, which I've been talking about as those episodes have come out. Just again, really great, perfect continuation of my favorite cartoon. It's been really grand, and don't think I forgot, Malik, that eventually we're going to do our collaborative talks on the earlier seasons. But yeah, the Steven Universe content that we got in 2019 was pretty neat, as was DuckTales Season 2, which, I don't know, I may have to go back. I think was an improvement on Season 1, which is saying a lot because I already think that's a great show. Infinity Train, Season 2 of which will be starting in just a couple of days from this recording, was a really great, really unique show. Something that I think you might actually enjoy a lot, Malik, and it's a pretty quick little mini series, so you could probably breeze through it in a couple of hours. So I definitely recommend that. And Netflix really killed it this year or last year with animation. They gave us, speaking of Cartoon Network stuff, there's the Netflix original series 12 Forever, which was a pilot that I watched a couple of years back and was eager to see a series on, and I was glad we finally got it. Sadly, it got canceled not too long ago. I want to say a couple of months back, they confirmed they were not doing season 2. But if you're into sort of like the really kind of classic late 90s, early 2000s kind of feel of Cartoon Network shows, it definitely feels like one of those. Nickelodeon had their deal with Netflix where they did a couple of original animated movies for the platform, like Rocko's Modern Life Static Cling was really funny and really heartfelt and was great representation. And I say that as someone who's not even really the biggest fan of Rocko's Modern Life, but that was a really charming, clever little special, and it really felt like the show hadn't even been gone. And the same is true of Invader Zim Enter the Fortress, which I loved. Which those two things really felt like, wow, you took two shows that have been over for upwards of 2 decades, and you just kind of like neatly concluded them / continued them, left the door open for more in a way that feels like almost like they never left. It's honestly kind of spectacular. Highlight of the year for me, Netflix wise, is between Green Eggs and Ham and Klaus. Klaus is a really great, just gorgeously animated Christmas movie that came out at the end of November. Ask anyone who's seen it, they're like praising it like mad. It's really great. It's my favorite animated movie of last year. Green Eggs and Ham is also really great hand-drawn 2D animation. It was so good to have those two things kind of back to back as someone who's been starved for that kind of style of animation being approached for like the first time in a long time. It just felt really great to have that kind of smooth sort of 90s aesthetic to those two shows. And I hope that their success opens the gateway for more stuff like that, be it theatrically or on streaming. I just want more of that kind of animation. That's great. And also, it's just good to have an adaptation of Dr. Seuss that's not at best mediocre for the first time in a long time, so that's good. The Toy Story 4 was great. A lot of us spent years really apprehensive about that movie getting made. But they came out, they stuck the landing. It was really great. It was just perfectly in line with the other three movies, and teaches me not to doubt that
I
IP.
speak to that.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
And you've mentioned stuff like that.
No.
So a really good friend of mine to go to the movies with me. At the time, I was like, there's nothing playing that I'm really all that interested in, and and I was like, you know what? This is a really good friend of mine. You know what? Screw it. Fine, we'll go. And, I was like, wow, this is surprisingly good, and I'm enjoying it. And surprisingly, I really hate anything from Pixar aside from maybe Cars 3. Not Cars 3, Cars 2. I didn't even see. But yeah, I thought that was a really good movie. I've only seen the first, like way back when I was a kid. I haven't revisited those movies in years. But it was kind of refreshing to sit with things, away from the property for so long.
Yeah, and like
That's
I myself have that's fair. I recently rewatched Toy Story 1. I've been meaning to rewatch Toy Story 2 for the first time in years, and I haven't yet gotten around to it. Toy Story 3, I also watched like not too long ago, I want to say a couple of months ago. And just to cap this part of the discussion off, my current rankings of those movies would probably be Toy Story 2 at the top, then Toy Story 4, then Toy Story 1, then Toy Story 3. But they're all so brilliant that it's kind of not even worth that distinction at this point. They're all just perfect movies for me. But that said, yeah, that was all the animated stuff that I loved this year. Something I don't know. These two are kind of similar for me in how I vibe with them. That being The Kid Who Would Be King, which was a nice little family fantasy movie that sort of flew under everyone's radar, but I eventually got around to seeing it, and it was a really good time. It's the kind of family movie that we don't really see much of anymore, and that I wish we had more often, where it's just so earnest and sincere and not afraid to be for kids while still being an unabashedly good movie. And I also feel the same way about Detective Pikachu, which I revisited semi-recently, and I'm going to be watching again in hopefully the next couple of days, if I can find the time for it. But I really love that movie. And someone, I forget exactly who it was, I think it was Scott Thomas, who I follow on Twitter, suggested that like Detective Pikachu should be like the model for like mainstream big budget movies going forward. And depending on how you interpret that, I kind of am right there with him. Insofar as, yeah, I love the sort of MCU, like kind of older family audience oriented action movie tone that Hollywood has kind of adopted, and I'm perfectly fine with that. But I also kind of miss a feeling of like family and kids movies from the 90s and 80s and early 2000s, where they were more openly emotional and more sort of simplistic while still managing to have an element of depth to them. And it's a difficult kind of feeling to describe, but I feel like you watch those two movies, Detective Pikachu and The Kid Who Would Be King, and you kind of get a sense of what I'm talking about, and I miss those kind of movies, and I hope that we get some more of those in future. And I hope that Detective Pikachu gets not necessarily a sequel per se, but some kind of continuation in that same universe, or even just other Nintendo properties adapted with that same kind of approach, because I think it's the first legitimately kind of great video game movie we've ever had, and I really want more movies made in that style. the exact opposite sort of tone and vibe would be Parasite, which is, we're getting into sort of like tail end of the year stuff now. But Parasite was great. Parasite and Us, and also Knives Out. I don't know. I believe I linked you the video by Houston Productions that kind of took Knives Out and Parasite and Us, and also Joker, and kind of did an interesting comparison of those four movies and the way that they are kind of similar in terms of tone and subject matter and like political messaging. And I really like, I'm gonna say all three of those movies, but Knives Out and Us and Parasite I think are three really clever, really smart, really appropriate movies for today's political climate. And of the three, Parasite is probably my favorite, but I think they're all really brilliant, and I think anyone should watch all three of them. And also, as you mentioned, and I almost forgot about Jojo Rabbit.
It's Knives Out.
Yeah, like it's a tough race. I'll say that much. It's a hard race, but Parasite kind of edges it out for me.
With Us, I've seen some people say it kind of breaks that. Do you agree with that?
No.
I think it definitely contextualizes the movie for, and when you see the movie for a second time or even a third time, knowing that in the back of your mind, all of your ticks and all of that stuff makes so much sense. And
yeah, like if there's anything that I could see breaking the movie for somebody, if there's any part of like the climax / third act that I could see breaking that movie for somebody, it's just kind of the logistics of how exactly does like the mimicry work of everyone who's still underground. Not entirely sure that makes sense, but the actual like ending twist that recontextualizes the whole movie, as you're saying, no, I like that a lot.
I do too. It just and another thing I love about it, I love happy endings because I don't think we get them enough. With that movie, somewhere in the gray, like because we killed the real mother, the fake one. Looking at the fake one really suspiciously and like, I know what you did, and then he puts the mask on like he wants to kill her. That's a really twisted, messed up ending. But our quote unquote protagonist, they came out the other side, like that whole family is still intact by the end, despite that. So it's really weird and I like it a lot.
Yeah, and that's interesting because I did not have the same read that you did, where he's definitely wary of her, but I did not at any point get a like he wants to kill her vibe from that ending. I just got a sense of like
exactly what, because he
gives
her that look and he puts the mask back on. That made me think he wants her dead.
I didn't get that at all. No, like because he just wears that mask like habitually anyway, and like what I got from that is he feels like the way the audience feels, which is just like
in that moment while he's looking at her like that.
I don't know. I didn't get that. I got the sense that he's thinking what we're thinking, which is just like, I don't know about this. I'm glad that everyone that we care about got out alive, but knowing what I know, this is kind of messed up.
Because it's not fear or reservation, straight up anger. Like he looks angry at her. Like he looks like, I know exactly what you are. You're not, even though you are. Like it's messed up, and he puts the mask back on. Like I don't know. That just made me think he wants her dead, and she gives him that back. So that's a really
I've
weird
got to
ending, but
rewatch.
I do like it.
I've got to rewatch that ending. I read his facial expression totally differently. But next
But
on my
go ahead to your
list,
next one.
yeah, next on my list is Jojo Rabbit, as you so helpfully brought up earlier, and I really, really adore that movie. It's another one of those movies where Taika Waititi has such a unique style and there's such a feeling to his movies, and this one I think is the most out of all of them, where it's just like it exists in this weird sort of space where it's totally farcical and yet so genuine and earnest emotionally, where even as the characters are basically living a cartoon, you still get an emotional realness from it. And that's not something that I think a lot of other creators capture. Like his approach to that is really unique. And that aside, there's also naturally the MCU and DC movies that we got last year. And I mentioned Joker and how I came out of the theater thinking, that's fine. It's a decent movie. I've sort of absorbed a lot of other people's arguments, and I'm really eager to go back and sit down with it again before we do the 2019 superhero movies in review list, because I don't know how I'm going to feel about that movie when I sit down with it again. I might dislike it a lot, or I might like it a lot more. And part of the reason I feel that way is because with Shazam coming out of that movie, I was very much, yeah, it's solid, it's fine. I don't love it. And watching it a second time with my mom and my sister, I really liked it a lot more. Like, I still have issues with the third act. I think the third act goes on way too long. There are some beats that I think don't work quite the way the movie wants it to. But in general, I just had a much more... Yeah, sorry, you go first.
As I mentioned when we cast for that movie, I don't think the theme of family that they're going for works. Is put enough time with that family and can't even bring himself to say thank you when they find his mom for him. He goes back to them at the end and teams up with them right before he fights those monsters, just because he has nowhere else to turn to. And so the whole theme of family rings really hollow for me with that movie. And like, it's a fun in terms of actually getting me to care and getting me to actually take something away from the movie message and theme wise, it kind of fails at that.
Yeah, I don't have that nearly as much, especially on a second watch. But yeah, I don't know. Because have you seen it since theaters? Because if not, we can both watch it again prior to making the list, and you can see if anything sort of differs on a newer, more recent viewing.
I mean, sure, I have that. Go back to it and give it the benefit of the doubt and see if somehow magically I feel differently about that whole thing.
Yeah. But yeah, I had that with that movie, so who knows how I'm gonna react to seeing Joker again after giving it a bit of a break. The MCU I thought was mostly on top form last year. A lot of people are very, very unenthused about Captain Marvel. I've watched that movie several times now at this point, and each time I don't necessarily enjoy it substantially more, but I always have my initial enjoyment of it sort of reaffirmed, where I'm like, yeah, I understand, I guess, how some people consider this low tier MCU or just doesn't engage them. But for me, every time I sit down with it, I really enjoy myself and I really care and I have a good time. So I'm not complaining.
That's Captain Marvel. Sat down, and um, I liked it substantially more. Um, I mean, I can swallow the Nick Fury thing now. It's super dumb. Ridiculous, and I get you, but that whole thing is easier for me to swallow now. Um, yeah, but otherwise, and
Far From Home is another one that I like more on rewatches, and I even liked it a lot in the theater. It's another one that's sort of divisive, at least among like the hardcore Spider-Man fan base. But like people have their reasons for disliking the MCU's interpretation of Peter Parker and his mythos. And at this point, you're either on board or you're not, and I am definitely on board. And I appreciate a lot of what that movie's doing, and I think it gives Peter a really compelling character arc. It substantially improves the action from Homecoming. It's just, I think it's a really neat movie.
yeah, I'm on board too. Only major again with that movie in particular is Aunt May. And a lot of in the beginning of the movie. The movie is great. Altogether, I think Homecoming is still a stronger movie. But as you proved, he does have a great arc, and it fitting epilogue to end. That was something I appreciated a lot. And it's just another. So, I'm gonna give it a thumbs up, despite the little reservations I have with it.
And then there's Endgame, which I don't know, just spoiling my list, I guess, remains my favorite of the comic book movies to have come out last year. Of all the stuff that I did see last year is still like top of my list. Just, again, people have their reservations with it. The more I watch it, the more I find about it that works. And like even the stuff that I had reservations with on like seeing it in the theater, like really sitting down with it and like being able to absorb more of it just because it's so long and so dense with stuff. The more I see it, the more I appreciate it, and it's just I really, really like it. And like I've been like planning on doing a video about Hulk in that movie and why I think his presence in that movie is underappreciated, and it's still pretty low on the totem pole of stuff that I want to get to, but it'll come eventually. And like I don't know, just all of the stuff that even I was kind of like iffy on initially with that movie just works for me more and more the more I see it. And it's a great time. It never feels the 3 hours. It's just, it's so good. And also, probably my favorite score from any movie last year. Just thought I'd lay that out there. Alan Silvestri. I want to say this Avengers Endgame is probably, in my opinion, Alan Silvestri's best work.
I would have to agree. The theme at the beginning of the movie and the theme at the end, Tony's funeral.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot keep my eyes trying to get to those scenes, and a lot of that is because of his score. It's not my favorite Marvel movie. It still isn't my favorite Marvel movie, but it is the most emotional experience I've ever had in a movie theater.
I have one last item on my list, which is probably just my favorite thing of last year, which was something that I was very unenthused and a little bit apprehensive about, which very quickly became like one of my favorite things ever, which is Watchmen. And like this is on your list, and it's like it's so is Doom Patrol and Umbrella Academy and The Boys, and it's really interesting to me that 2019 was basically like the year of the super weird, super out there, super comic booky shows that were also for adults. And like I love all of them, but Watchmen to me is the one that takes the cake. Like Watchmen is one of my favorite shows now. And like I don't need a season 2. I don't need anything else. Like David Lindelof has made it clear that he does not plan on being involved with the season 2. He has no plans as of yet for any sort of continuation, but just as a sequel to the graphic novel Watchmen, I feel like this is the first Watchmen related anything since the graphic novel that lives up to it. Like the movie is a really good adaptation, but I think the movie's a really good adaptation. I think it's a really good movie. I think it doesn't quite. I think the story changes, and like the sort of ways that Zack Snyder's approach to filmmaking have inadvertently changed the meaning of some things, made it sort of lose the point of the graphic novel a bit. So in a lot of ways, it's great adaptation. In a lot of other smaller ways, it's kind of iffy and debatably goes against the spirit of what the book was doing. I do not have that with this show. I think this show like is the experience. I imagine that watching this show is what like reading that book for the first time probably would have been like. In its time, like contemporarily, because in so many smart ways it mimics the structure and the thematic approach, and especially with the ending, kind of like the moral ambiguity, but also sort of the moral certainty that the book had, and it manages to do all that while still telling a story that stands on its own. You don't necessarily have to have read the book to get the story. It manages to do sort of the thing that we were talking about with The Mandalorian, which I've never seen most shows do, or almost any other show do, which is it is completely serialized. Like, episode 1 leads directly into episode 2, into episode 3, and so on until the end, and yet at the same time, for the most part, I also feel like you could turn on a given episode and just appreciate it as almost a short movie. Like, I can't think of almost any other show that has managed to do that so perfectly. Like, it's a great 8-hour movie, quote unquote, to use that terminology, and it's also kind of 8 really great connected short stories. It's really good. All of the characters are just as interesting and fascinating as the original Watchmen characters. The politics is just as cogent and appropriate for the time. I think it's just as sort of brave and uncompromising with the storytelling, and it's just as weird. I like how weird it is, because the thing about Watchmen and the sort of ripple effects that it had over the course of comics and the media adapted from comics is that in order to sort of like chase the tail of Watchmen, you had a lot of stories sort of like downplaying the cheesy and weird elements in order to appeal more to adults. But this show gets it in that it's like you can appeal to adults while still having you don't have to get rid of the giant psychic squid that falls on top of New York. I'm just going to say Watchmen is perfect and let you carry on.
My list, we did have some similarities, so I thought, tackle the stuff to get there. So, these Slam. I don't know if you've seen any previews for that, or...
I've seen a little bit of discussion about it, have not had the chance to sit down with it myself yet.
And team.
Yeah, like I know the broad story of it, yeah.
Okay, that movie. It's also really depressing. Um, yeah, because it's not the. I'm just gonna like the squeaky clean Hollywood ending that you would expect from a story like that. They don't get out of that. They don't even get to go to jail. They're gunned down for being unarmed.
Oh, well,
They're
that makes
just
sense as a Bonnie and Clyde type ending.
they just sad. Especially both die. Um, and like the exchange that they have right before they die, it's good.
Ooh.
That was pretty good movie. Black and Blue was also really good, and
That's my dog.
not his name. He plays Crossbones in the Avengers movies. Frank Grillo.
Frank Grillo.
I just remembered and said his name. Frank Grillo. He plays the bad guy. He is a dirty cop and a black woman. Him murdering drug dealers and not on her body cam. The guy tries to shoot her, but she manages to escape, and so the whole movie is saying, and she, before all the dirty cops and gang members get to her and kill her. Tyrese also in that movie, and I gotta say it's not a super deep role, but it's some of the best acting along.
Interesting.
Yeah, he's not just the joke. He is in the Fast and Furious movies, secondly, and solid character. That's a really great little thriller. I highly recommend. Now the rest of these are shows. I would like to. I'm gonna go ahead and get the wish least to say about that, and not because it's not good, but because it's so dense. I binged that. When it hit Netflix? Who used to be in the Navy with me? He got out like I want to say a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago now at this point. But we still keep and gigantic Witcher fan. He's played all the games. I think he's read all the books so well, and got it for the show. To talk about it with him, so I binged it, and also because it stars Henry Cavill and it's a Netflix thing, and I thought it looked really good. It was. Henry Cavill's performance is amazing. Henry Cavill is a fan himself, and he's also very familiar with Witcher, so that definitely comes. Production value is just as good as anything in Game of Thrones. I mean, I need to sit down with it again. It's so dense, I can barely even tell you what it's about. Henry Cavill plays.
I'm definitely sold on it already.
Yeah, Henry Cavill plays Geralt, Witcher, who is essentially just an enhanced human being, just enhanced through magic. But he's stronger and faster than the average human being. That's essentially it. And also, like, he's a monster. There's a witch that named Yennefer sacrifices her ability to bear children to get into this special witch. She's a really fascinating character. And she and Geralt, then end up splitting up and was working with them. The show is just around. It's really good. I will say, while the news pretty gratuitous. Didn't bother me Game of Thrones, where I felt like that was just a gimmick. They were running through the whole show. It's like, please watch our show. It's got beauty. This show debatably kind of has the same thing. Which was a big problem with Game of Thrones, but I don't know. I'm a little more invested in story, and this is more my thing than Game of Thrones is. It's fairly similar.
I have a coworker who very openly dislikes Game of Thrones, and they quite like The Witcher, and yet are simultaneously resentful of it because they also don't like Henry Cavill, and they don't like that this show made her attracted to him.
Henry Cavill in that hot tub in one of the episodes has become just as prevalent. It's kind of
So yeah, that's definitely
But
on
yeah,
my list of
definitely.
things to get to.
And Umbrella Academy. That's a really great, weird show. Really realized, but I enjoy it all the same. I think it's really, really good. It's a solid character study of all the kids who have powers but have been adopted by rich guy who just wanted to essentially use them, and he was kind of a terrible father, and it was our family is made up of complete strangers. Obviously you got Klaus number 5, you can teleport. I think number 5 is probably my favorite character.
Agreed.
There's this really great scene where they're sitting down and you've been alone for all this time. You must have been really hard. He's like, no, I wasn't alone. Who's alone? We'll get a flashback with it. And then we see that it's just a man. And then with Luther, he has this scene where Luther tells him, your problem is you think you're better than us. Yeah, and he says, I don't think I'm better than you. I know I am.
Ice cold.
Yeah, he's fostered this connection with an object from not feeling alone. They've also the show Dark Phoenix better than been done in any X-Men movie, which is insane to me. I'm blanking on names, but the girl in the family who plays Violet, who doesn't appear to have any show, played by Ellen Page, she's great.
Yeah, that really is like best case scenario version of the Phoenix Saga, just short of following it up with actually going to space and having space pirate shenanigans. But somehow you took the thing that the X-Men movies tried to do for 2 movies, and you managed to do it in a show and make it not awful. How this shouldn't be so difficult, and yet you.
Yeah, but that show's super weird, super zany, and I like it a lot. It's based on a comic that isn't Marvel or DC. That's really cool. Doom Patrol. Doom Patrol is one of those shows that I thought looked kind of awful from the outside, or it was terrible. What is this show even? But then I started watching it, and okay. First of all, I love how zany and weird reference it. Have Mr. Nobody constantly narrating like Deadpool and breaking the fourth wall. perfect. And this is one of the most interesting and unique character studies of characters I've ever seen. Like almost at all. Two or three like actual fight scenes across the entire season. But it's all the same. The opening credits. I don't think we do opening credits enough. Or at least enough in shows, so I kind of missed. One of the best opening credits I've ever seen for a show ever. I never skip it because it's interesting.
Yeah, pretty much literally everything that you just said. I can't think of a single thing I disagree with. And I also just want to add to that, this, like a lot of what we've talked about, most of it, I even say today, has been like pretty perfect casting. For some reason, when I think about this show, the casting in particular comes out to me like not a single role wasn't cast perfectly. And like Mr. Nobody, like I genuinely wonder if he would be as effective as he is if it were anyone other than Alan Tudyk playing him. Because Alan Tudyk's just so great at that, walking the very fine line between sinister and totally goofball. And it, like his casting choice in particular, I feel like cements kind of this show. And also like Brendan Fraser
He's one of the best.
doing vocals. Yeah, really, like you don't always want to say like pejorative statements like that, but that's true. It's accurate. He is. And it's like him being in that role, I think, kind of encapsulates the mood of this whole show and how kind of perfect it is. Because this is a show where when stuff does happen and it does get a little actiony, it gets gory. And like of all the shows that we've talked about, even more so than Watchmen, it's like the most, I don't necessarily want to say mature, but the most sort of like quote unquote mature, the most sort of like to those sensibilities. And yet at the same time, it's like a freaking irreverent cartoon. And it never feels out of place. Like it never feels like it's contradicting itself. And it never takes away from the character drama. And it's just so pitch perfect.
And I know Doom Patrol would have been, especially not really knowing anything outside of when the original Teen Titans cartoon. I never would have thought I'd like that show more than Titans. Infinite. Before I seen it, of course.
Yeah, and don't worry, everybody. We are, in fact, going to talk about Titans. Oh boy, are we going to talk about Titans.
My brain's imploding. But yeah, so next show I want to talk about is 5 episodes as of right now. But that show has turned out to be everything I wanted it to be in. I think I don't want to put words in your mouth because I'm sure you're going to speak to this. I think they were able to win you over because you were not excited for this show, and even just with the first episode, it was not. So, how'd you feel about Harley Quinn?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Seen 5 episodes.
It's an interesting case where it's like this isn't partially like not. I don't know. Maybe going back to the first episode, I'll enjoy it more. But it's definitely the vibe I got from marketing materials just sort of didn't appeal to me at all. And it had this is always my go-to comparison. It had a very Adult Swim kind of like standard show kind of vibe, whereas the reputation that those shows generally have is that they're like, you know, they're really funny if you're like high, and they've got this very sort of loose, conversational, vulgar sort of presentation to it, and it's a lot of characters sitting around having very kind of ad-lib feeling conversations about like adult subject matter, and like I guess it's just a matter of execution, because in a lot of those shows it just feels kind of lazy to me. But this one combines it with the element of it does like throw itself into the fact that it's in the DC universe and really plays on all of that mythos and has comedic takes on all of the characters that still feel true to the characters. And it's not just Harley Quinn taking over everything. Like, the other characters still feel like characters. It's ironic. It's called the Harley Quinn show, and yet, unlike certain other things that Harley Quinn has appeared in, it doesn't feel like everyone is just taking a backseat to her. Like, everyone is funny, and everyone is kind of charming and a unique spin on the character that still manages to feel in character. And like, the episode concepts are unique and fun. And like, I'm sitting down and watching do it with my sister Eden, and we're both just like having a ball. Like, it's a laugh riot.
Yeah, some of my favorite stuff, like when I nemesis, but then I was like, yeah, that rules out Batman. Catwoman says he waxes everything.
Yes. That whole my favorite bit of the whole show so far has to be that whole bit at the Daily Planet where she tries to get Lois to retract the article and Superman just comes in, and it's like, well, is this about the paywall again? I mean, $7.99 is a little bit ridiculous. It doesn't even include the crossword. And then Damian comes in and he's on like a Robin hoverboard, but not like an actual hoverboard, like a hoverboard with wheels.
Oh, it's so funny.
Yeah.
Or like when Superman bursts in and he has up like go through wall. I'm like, Lewis is like, yeah, I've been telling you that.
It's great. The show's great. I'm so glad to be wrong about this show.
There's so much great irreverent character stuff in this show. Like for everyone. They have a hilarious take on Bane. He has the rises. He has the darkness. And he's kind of a pansy and a pushover, and it's so funny.
Yeah, this is right. Looking forward to
She's
more.
Right, you're not very nice to us, Joker. Like that show is what has me still keeping my DC Universe subscription. Like once that show's over, I don't really see myself keeping it unless we finally get we know we're getting to, I don't know, 3-4 months down the line. I'll probably cancel my service until that's finally hit here. Yeah, like right now I'm really enjoying that show. And that's really scratching the itch, because I can't call Joker necessarily a bad. It masterpiece that everyone else heralded as for me.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
that's I mean, unless we're talking straight up like commentary or discussion purposes, I don't even see myself going back to that movie. Unless it's DC. So I mean, yeah, this wasn't the strongest year for DC overall. But I do really like Patrol and Harley Quinn. I really enjoyed Harley Quinn. So the last one I would like to talk about is, of course, I have seen on this show 4 times when it's come out. I saw it one binging it. Me and my friends on the ship, we binged it all together while on duty. And then a few months ago, a different set of friends that I work with also had heard about it and wanted to see it, and we started it, and I binged it with them. Then ended up binging it at another friend's house. So I have seen this show like 4 times in its entirety. I know season 1 pretty well, and I was not familiar with these comics. I knew Garth Ennis wrote this huge chunk of Punisher, but I didn't know, like, I never actually picked it up and read it. I didn't even know there's in the comics looked like a comic called The Boys and also Punisher. And this show, from what I've heard from people who have read the comics, significantly, and the comic just goes places that you just should not go on television. Seems to pretty much be the unanimous consensus from people who
yeah, I've heard things to the effect that the comic goes places that you wouldn't want to go if you want the audience to care about your characters. So maybe that's for the best.
Yeah. Carl Urban in this role, sensational. His performance is Billy Butcher. Like, that is my favorite performance I've seen this year. Story or anything, but just he's just so much fun.
Yeah, you can tell he's loving that.
He's loving this role, and even in the more serious moments, he's just as first Homelander and that whole thing. I think he'll go about corporate greed and marketing and the kind of manipulation and just all these really interesting themes with superhero what really look like under a microscope. I thought that was incredibly well done and fascinating, and production values are insane. Cast is really good. The soundtrack is great. I do love how insanely violent the show is, yet at least for me, and I've grown up playing extreme stuff since I was 5. While a lot of that can be super extreme, it never really feels like, I don't know what much would be, because violence doesn't bother me at all, but it did never feel to it. It just felt like part of the story. I think to see where the company itself and inner workings, where that goes moving. The woman that we had running it before, obviously it's not there anymore. And he's, what's the name of the guy who plays the evil guy with the sword in Orient?
Giancarlo Esposito?
Yes, he's above Stillwell in terms of who runs the company. We only see him once in the flashback, when for that whole but actually no, I think we do also see him in the present, because how excited she is. Military deal, I think.
Yeah, he's in the present. I don't think he's in the flashback. Those two scenes are just
I may be getting those. Yeah, they're just set in the same place. Gotcha. So I'm interested to see what how he's going to interact with the 7, or I guess the 5 or the 6. And the big moving forward is the Deep and Dervation coming out as he. Because I think while there is some potentially interesting stuff with, her being a lesbian, or public to that kind of thing, I don't think we spend enough time with a sense of her, and you're able to get a sense of everyone else, even I'm blinking on his name, the invisible guy, Translucent. Even Translucent,
Yeah.
even though we kill him, one that I feel like is in desperate need of more development, and that's something to get fixed and tease it. But yeah, that's my only major gripe, if I even have one.
Yeah. Like I said, it's great that we've got so many different shows like coming out relatively close to each other that kind of scratch an itch that I never really knew needed scratching, which is like shows that just have carte blanche to get balls to the wall crazy and like don't have any sort of limitations whatsoever on like subject matter and like being able to tackle serious issues and get you to care about characters while also basically being insane to the point of like farce. And I like this show, I think, definitely leans the most into just like some farcical elements, but it's so good, it's so well done. And like I haven't read the comic, but I know quite a bit about it and like certain changes that were made. And I definitely feel like had they not changed things from the comic, we would be looking at a very different show, and one that maybe still you, but definitely me would be less interested in. So I'm glad we have the show that we have, and season 2 cannot get here soon enough.
And major change from the comics in terms of the character that I want to speak to a little bit, since we couldn't push the cast feel that we did together because of audio issues. But so A-Train, not black, and there's a really interesting scene where he's giving an interview about how he knocked out he's running away from some gang members that are having a shootout near his home, and he outruns the bullets. the woman behind him running the interview says, "Can you say the gun violence and make it?" And then you see the action, and it's like, yeah, we're definitely doing some media and how they like to, control narrative and what people say, and really hearing it thing. I really like that.
Agreed. That said, I know that you've got more on your list, and do you also still want to? Oh, okay. So in that case, yeah, let's get into our things that we're looking forward to 2020, because we've been at this for over an hour, close to 2 hours, both this and Mandalorian included. So let's begin to wrap it up. So do you want to do your 2020 expectations and excitements first?
I guess I can go ahead and knock mine out first. Yeah, sure. No Time to Die, the last James Bond film. So Anna De, probably pronounced her name wrong.
Anna De Armas. I think it's just Armas.
Armas, okay. Before she was really Blade Runner 2049, and she was great, and of course Knives Out, where she got to star opposite Daniel film. So I'm excited to see her play off of him in a Bond film, and in the trailer we get to see her, of her own. So I'm Sure. Um, Next up, Wonder Woman, 2049. I love the first. That is the best live action movie that DC has made since The Dark Knight. And I think, I mean, I'm always, it always irritates me when we bring back, just because if you're not a straight up farce and you want me to take your, it's a cop out. It's a Rise of Skywalker thing. I just, on principle, I hate. This is the one instance where that reservation isn't as strong for me. Ship they had in that first movie, and we are getting to see that further. I would what the deal is to survive, but that's a whole different thing. The trailer looked to see that film. So next up, The Boys season 2. They released a little teaser. Some pretty wild violence. I think we saw Black Noir stab tear a guy's jaw. It's absolutely insane. And Billy is going to go the group fairly soon. He's not just going to be saddled with Homelander the majority of the season, so it'll be interesting to see what, for the group after finding out that his wife is actually alive, and we had Homelander's kid.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see sort of what I'm assuming we're going to see, sort of like what was for season 1, The Boys versus Vought and all of their superheroes, become a more complicated sort of like, okay, so Billy's personal grudge against Homelander wasn't like founded the way he thought it was, and Vought is still a problem almost as much for Homelander as for anyone else. So it'll be this really weird, complicated situation where you've got Vought, the company, in one camp, and the superheroes who are kind of subject to them but have their own desires and are kind of against the company in another camp, and the boys in like Camp 3, and how are they gonna like intersect, and are their goals going to ever like align or anything? Like, what could happen?
Yeah, the possibilities are endless, and here and too horribly long. So very, very excited. Okay, so next is Bloodshot. He is the king of absurdist action movie stars. Debatably, or debatable, but The Rock is more popular than Vin Diesel. But anyway, that movie was solid. That's also based on a comic. I am looking forward to it. Which, I mean, I'm not expecting obviously a super compelling nuanced story or anything. It just looks like willing to go on the ride. So next we have The Gentleman, which is a Guy Ritchie film. Really interesting. Starring Charlie Hunnam and Matthew McConaughey. That's all I need. I'm here. You have my money.
Nice.
Tenet. That is Christopher Nolan's next film. And the guy's one of the best directors alive. Going to be an original action film, so I'm interested to see what that's like. Man is going to be starring A Quiet Place 2. I freaking love. It was much like Zombieland. was the kind of film that I thought was alone. It didn't really. Um, and when I watched the sequel to Zombieland, I was like, this is time, but it doesn't have the heart of the first film. And I think this will be the case. It's the first trailer today, and it looked great. And I am it's pretty much the same group of people working on it, so there's no reason to be as good as the first one. So I'm very excited about that. Expecting that franchise at this point, so it's just more of that. I'll be happy. Next is Bad Boys for Life, which that franchise, right? Michael Bay isn't as dumb as Fast and Furious, but it's just a good time, with good charismatic actors. So I'm looking forward to finally getting a third film, and that there is actually one that I forgot to put on my list for.
Awesome. Wonder Woman 84, I'm looking forward to that. That's probably the comic book movie I'm looking forward to most next year. Whether it ends up being the one I enjoy most, we shall see. But yeah, of all the ones that we have, like, solid marketing material for as of right now, that's the one that's selling me the most. I also am very curious about how Steve Trevor's back. And I'll say this, I'm not looking forward to the inevitable, like, backlash from you-know-which crowd based on Maxwell Lord being so clearly patterned on Donald Trump, but what are you gonna do? And yeah, that movie looks like it's gonna be super fun. The rest of my list is honestly pretty short. It's just Doctor Who, which the first episode of this newest series has just dropped last night. As soon as we're done recording this, I'm gonna go straight back to hopefully finishing editing on my review for that episode. And thankfully, it seems to be an episode that a lot of people are responding really positively toward, and I hope that positivity carries through the rest of the season, because a lot of people had a lot of complaints about last season, and I personally enjoyed it a lot. I hope this is a case where my opinion is not the minority opinion. But yeah, gonna be enjoying the heck out of that show for the next several weeks. Falcon and Winter Soldier and WandaVision. WandaVision just like last night got announced as having been pushed from early 2021 to sometime in 2020. And I'm really excited about that show. Falcon and Winter Soldier, I'm slightly less excited about, but I'm sure that's going to be a great time. I have kinda Black Widow and kinda Godzilla vs. Kong here. Black Widow just because I've still got my reservations about just doing that movie now. And, the trailer wasn't entirely to my liking. I like it more the more I watch it, that trailer, but still. Godzilla vs. Kong, the fact that it's been pushed back as far as it has to where it's now coming out like later in the year, I'm a little iffy on. But Godzilla King of the Monsters was a movie from last year that I enjoyed quite a bit. If you're into the kind of classic Godzilla movie structure, that's a fun movie, and I hope that they continue that kind of that unabashed, just straight up making a cheesy monster movie, but for the 21st century vibe for Godzilla vs. Kong. And is there anything else?
Yeah, I did want to speak to the Marvel shows. So, deliriously excited because the John Wick guys are some of the John Wick guys are involved also in action. So that show, based on their track record, the world building, really thrilling action scenes. So I'm excited for that. As far as WandaVision goes, Wanda, when we found out the news that it was going to be released in 2020 instead of 2021, she's one of my favorite of the newer characters, and I haven't got to explore her nearly as much as I would have liked, and I'm excited she is finally getting her own show. And I cannot wait to see what that ends up being.
And I'm glad that Paul Bettany also gets to continue to work and eat. So that's good.
I am wondering how they explain him getting put back together. Maybe Sherry.
I'm sticking to my theory that the bulk of that show is not going to be taking place in like regular MCU reality.
Well, it's interesting because Kevin Feige talked about how that show is going to tie into Doctor Strange, and that film is going to have major ramifications for MCU moving forward. That all the shows are essentially follow-ups to Endgame. Moving forward in regular time. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, on that note, let us know what you guys are most excited about in the comments, and we'll see.
See you later.